Hello, it's Lisa Michaels back, and I'm so excited. This is my very first new What's Between Us relationship show. It's the G-rated relationship show. I'm your host, Lisa Michaels. I did this for 7 years, almost twice a month in Beaverton, Oregon. And I would take on the female's perspective, and I would get a different single man to take on the man's perspective, which I called the GG, gentleman guest co-host. But now I'm evolving it into the what are we in the 20s now that we are in. Wow, time is it's almost 20 years. I started it in yeah, it's over 20 years. I started it in 2005. So yeah, over 20 years. And lots have changed in 20 years. But the rules have not changed. The rules are you're not allowed to say the three-letter word with the X in it. And I'm not talking about tax. So it's as though you're having a flirty conversation or an interesting conversation with your spouse, and the kids are sitting at the dinner table, and you want to have this conversation, but you don't want them to know the specifics. It makes it much more fun to talk about. You can use terms like horizontal mambo, know somebody in the biblical sense, intimacy, or have relations, but not to say the three-letter word with the X in it. And I am not talking about tax. So to get to it, this is Jackson. I want to introduce you to Jackson, somebody from another generation. And from the millennial generation, I have two millennials. And what's the next one? Is it Z?
Gen Z, yeah.
Gen
So
Z. I've got,
millennials run from January 1st, 1981 to December 31st, 1996. Then Gen Z goes from 1997 to 2012, I believe.
yes. Okay. I've got a 1998 or so. I've got them from both generations, but they're not with me right now. Maybe perhaps I've got one that's single. The Gen Z one is that'd be interesting to have a millennial and a Gen Z, and then a contemporary of mine, somebody I've known or knew years ago, got reacquainted with Mike Sheedy, and this is his son. We're going to have a conversation about relationships between parents and kids, between husbands and wives, between somebody who wants to date, what the two generations, how the two generations totally changed in the way in which courting and all these relationships first came about. So I want Mike to take it away. Tell you were on a roll before we started the show. Tell us about what you were just saying.
Well, we were having a discussion about what your earlier shows had gone over and talking about, what each side wants. And you mentioned something about what women want and what they think, or what you think, what they want for men. And in my view, women don't care what men want. Women want what they want, and they will pick a man that they think will be able to deliver that, whether it's children, financial security, and I don't know what the guy gets out of it in return, but it seems like the quid pro quo has gotten a little bit out of sync. And it seems like, there's all kinds of sayings out there that sort of indicate that men have sort of given up, like happy wife, happy life. Well, I don't think that really works. To me, in my experience, making women happy does not make them happy. Women have, if you go back to the Garden of Eden, okay, where this all started, they were living in a paradise and they were just told you had one rule: you couldn't eat from the tree of knowledge, the forbidden fruit. And what does Eve do? Says, no, no, I want some of that. And so she picks down the apple, bites from it, and gives it to Adam, and they're thrown out of Eden. That epitomizes biblically, certain truths about the two species. Well, the two genders, two sex. I said the bad word. I said the sexes, and not in a sexual way, though.
Don't say it again.
So anyway, so
The two genders.
well, no, when you get into gender and sex, I don't know what the difference is, but it seems to be
No, we're in this case, we are
what men
not
and
falling for
women
that.
want. Right, what men
Gender,
and
what
women
one
want.
gender and the other gender wants. That's it.
Right,
Whether
right.
you're an innie or an outie.
So I think
I don't know about that though. That's a problem in and of itself that you just said. So you as a man, because you're not a woman, you'll not know how women feel. I, as a woman, never know how men feel. Uh, I see how we all have evolved, the women, and you said it one of the first times I had a conversation with you about it was it all stems from that nasty feminist movement that they started. For thousands of years, women were, well, I don't know, thousands of years, but they were happy because everybody knew their place in the scheme of things. And women are naturally wanting to give and take care of and make happy another person. We just kind of are. Like I'm the happiest if I'm helping somebody else than if I'm sitting here going thinking about, ooh, what's going to make Lisa happy? That's the way I think women are. But uh it's almost like we've been trained to be self-centered and, oh, what does he have to offer? What does he have to offer? And I don't know. It's really gotten crazy. What's it like from this kind of topic from your perspective,
so.
Jackson?
So when a woman marries a man, what is the expectation that she has of how to make him happy, or is it about what she is expecting to get? I mean, what is she
Oh,
going to
I
do?
totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Women
Right,
have become exactly what you just stated.
right,
They have become what's in it for me.
right.
Terrible.
What has he done for me lately? And
Mhm.
I think that's, I had two marriages, two completely different women, although they had the same first name, which was a whole different issue. But, they
That
couldn't have been
keeps it
more
easy.
different. I know, it's crazy, right? Not intentionally, it just sort of happened that way. I wasn't going out and looking for a woman with that name. It just was sort of popped up. I think I don't I think women want, and this is my perspective, is that women really don't know what they want.
Yes.
But
They know
because
what they
it
should want. They know what
it
society
well
tells them they should want. But
I think that is where everything's gone off the rails, is because they've been indoctrinated that they should want certain things. They should want a career, they should want family, a husband with certain characteristics, obviously a provider making more money than them, taller than them. Uh, want all these things, but the reality is that it's impossible to have all those things. I've heard that it's said that you can have a great life, you can have a great family life, you can have a great career, you can have great friends, you can have incredible fitness, but you can't have all because there's not enough time in the day. And I saw this. My sister lived in Marin County. She lived in a little town called Tiburon, and she had a lot of friends, who lived in Mill Valley and Sausalito and whatever. And what was truly amazing was all these women had everything that you would think you would make you happy. They were living in a beautiful part of the world, Northern California. They had beautiful homes. They had, wealthy husbands who were providing for them, had kids, and they also have one of the highest breast cancer rates in the country, where they have access to all this, and they're fit. They're doing yoga, they're working out. And the problem, I think, from my perspective, is women don't deal well with the stresses that men excel at, which is
mm-hmm.
competition with other people. I think women don't like that. It's very stressful for them, and that stress there's stress and there's eustress, right? Eustress is the good stress, the stress of trying to take care of your babies. I mean, that's something that women are naturally, biologically, hormonally designed for. Men are not. Um, and they don't, they don't know how to deal with it. But women naturally, they gravitate towards that. And when they don't have women, as we're seeing today, who do they gravitate towards nurturing? Well, immigrants, people who don't have anything. And I think that's why socialism is so appealing to them, because you are taking care of everybody. And that's why they tend to gravitate towards politicians like AOC and all these other women who are voicing this thing, because it hits. If they don't have kids, if they don't have somebody to nurture, that they will gravitate towards a philosophy, an ideology that will give those things, whether it's from their
Mhm.
tax dollars and everything else.
These,
Sure. What?
these gals that you're describing, that sounds a lot like somebody, and if you're political and you don't like this, I'm sorry, don't watch the show. But it sounds like these are women that are very much pro-choice and are very liberal.
I would agree
Have
with that. You
have
know,
this is the important part.
I
No
think that
relationship with God.
no. I think, well, that's maybe part
Because
of it
this is,
also.
they have a place in their heart. They need to have God. And if they don't have it, they gravitate towards all those distractions and supporting all those liberal ideals and getting gung ho about it because they're empty in that
Well,
area.
there was a study that even for women who are conservative, I just read this the other day, or saw it on online, talking about when you catch a cheater. Let's say someone's cheating at cards, and they would measure the reactions to the cheater getting his comeuppance. And men had no problem with the guy, or girl, who was getting his ass kicked because he got caught cheating, where the women weren't so much into it as the guys were. So even and that, there was no political, distribution in this. It's something I think women just aren't. And you see this
They're
with a
not as
lot of
justice oriented as men.
you see this with feminine judges. We had one here in Wisconsin where Jackson and I live. We live in Madison. There was a judge in Milwaukee who attempted to shield a criminal immigrant who was in her court from some ICE agents who were waiting to take him up. She actually escorted him out of her chambers and got him out. She got arrested. She got removed from the bench. She got disbarred. And they actually, the trial ended last week, and I think she didn't receive any jail time. But this is this is something that is a problem, okay? Because the that poor girl who was from Ukraine, who got stabbed in the neck in North Carolina in Mecklenburg County. Remember, black guy stood up and stabbed her in the neck. Well, that guy had been set loose by a female magistrate, and he had a violent history. He should have been in jail. So I think that is, and most of those women, both those women were probably liberal, but I think what I'm saying is that there is a sense of of nurturing, that if it is not invested in your own children, it's going to spread to
Yeah, but
uh,
they don't have kids.
it's spread to people who don't necessarily deserve it.
You may
I mean,
not
your
know.
kids deserve it. I
Yeah.
mean, even they do bad stuff, you're gonna love them, and you're gonna, maybe punish them, hopefully punish them, but you're still gonna love them.
Yeah.
And I think when women don't have an object or a
Focus
child
for their
or a
love.
focus for that empathy, then it gets distributed to a lot of bad places.
Yeah.
And I think feminism, as we're going back to the
Hmm.
whole topic of feminism, if you can look back to the roots of this goes back to Simone de Beauvoir, and the things that she would talk about was much in congruence with the people who were imported out of Germany during the 30s from the Frankfurt School, who were Herbert Marcuse, Antonio Grant, well, not Antonio Gramsci. He got imprisoned in Italy. But all these communists that were in Germany at the time, who were spreading this stuff of communism, were imported. A lot of them landed in New York. Some of them landed, actually, ironically, in Santa Monica, California. And the guys in New York all began to teach at Columbia University, which is
Mhm.
not a surprise.
Infiltrate.
And
That's
and and and
communism
these
infiltration. Is what you're talking.
sure, sure, and they began what they called the Long March through our institutions. And you can see today, I mean, the institutions that are the foundation of our society are the church, uh, the law, the military, the church, and the family. Well, if you are trying to destroy a family, and then the communists realized when they first came over here that the class differences that they saw in Europe, which they would,
Rail
utilize the
here.
class differences to cause, disruption in the social order, wouldn't work here because we had a strong middle class and we had a system of capitalism that would allow people to rise out of poverty and create something for themselves. They'd have a house, car, and they could have a family. The wife could stay at home. This was what, we grew up with in the 50s. I mean, both your mother and my mother, I know your mom well, and, they were stay-at-home moms and they were great at it, and I think we're the product of that. We're the benefactors of that. But in order to destroy that, they had to destroy the family.
They
And
had to get
so
the
what
women out of the house and get the women working. Plus, they could tax us. That was another
exactly
big part. Because
The Rockefellers,
Mhm.
yeah, that was their stated goal. The problem is that women have been taught all these things that feminism was espousing of being able to have it all. And the reality is you can't have it all. The ladies that my sister who lived in Tiburon um, would tell me, because she was a stay-at-home mom herself, is that all these women were perpetually unhappy. Because when they were at work, they were worried about what their kids were doing. They were worried about, losing their affection of their kids to the nanny who was, giving them a lot of love and all the things that the mom couldn't do because she wasn't there. But, she was competitive. She was taught that, I can compete with men. I can be competitive. I can
I am a
excel in a
woman in
man's world.
the
Right. But when she was at home spending time with her kids, she was real unhappy either because she wasn't able to do the stuff that guys she was competing against for partnership roles, or, getting promotions up the ladder because they didn't have that drain on their energy. They were constantly unhappy and all that stress from constantly being unhappy when you're at home, when you're at work. I mean, I think it begins to build, and I've seen this in a number of women that I've dated who were businesswomen, very successful. One of them I was dating down in Vegas when I was living in Vegas. She was going through divorce, and I mean, all the stress and anxiety about this, it caused her to get breast cancer, and she ended up passing. And
Oh,
and and I told her, I said, I've been through this twice. I know where you're at, I know where you're going through, but you got to let it go. Okay, you can't carry this around with you because every day that we would go out on a date, it was a litany of things that the ex had done, and I said, this is going to make you sick,
this is make you sick.
and
No,
and
yeah,
it did.
that's why when you give your life to Jesus, which I encourage everybody watching to do, when you give your life to Jesus, there's three forgivenesses. You need to forgive everybody who's ever bothered you or ever will bother you because it just poisons your soul. And sounds like it poisoned her soul. Number one. Number two, you need to ask for forgiveness. And you need to legitimately forgive them and you need to forgive yourself. And then once you have that, I don't know. I guess I'm perched of all that because if I have a problem, I just seek it out and ask the Lord. And a lot of times, what you'll see in your life is you'll be hit with a divorce or hit with something bad in your life, and you'll be so upset about it. And then years later, you'll realize if I hadn't had that thing happen, that bump in the road, then I wouldn't be. I wouldn't have had done this or that. I wouldn't have that child. I wouldn't have this. I mean, so you just don't focus on it. But when you have nothing else but to focus on, but what your own self is and what own
Mhm.
and all the injuries you've suffered and all the things that people have done, nobody gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to make Mike Sheedy feel like crap. The only reason anybody ever would do that,
Oh, I know some people.
Or Jackson, but seriously, but if you analyze even the people you're thinking of, the reason that they do that is they're feeling badly about themselves, and so they think it's like sugar. It tastes good for a second. They feel a little bit better about themselves when they stuck it to you for just that short period of time. And then they start, I mean, whether they want to admit it or not, then they start feeling bad about themselves because they've been mean. And apparently, I'm a big believer in listening to
Unless
people.
you're a sociopath.
Yes, that's true. So there are people out there like that, and I've met them, unfortunately. But
Yeah, me
I've done
too.
this deep dive into people who've had near-death experiences and hearing about what they have very consistent experiences when going to heaven. There are people that go to hell, and then they get to come back and have a second chance, thank God. Um, what they do is they do a life review. So like this meeting that we're all having right here now, if in my life review this was pulled up, I would not see it from my perspective. I would see it from how Jackson is feeling about what I'm saying and how Mike is feeling about what I'm saying. So if I say something that's really hurtful for you, and like if you're having your life review and you've said something really hurtful to somebody else, you'll feel the pain that you caused that person and you'll realize, whoa, why did I do that? Because we're all here to be kind and loving to everybody we come in contact with and to share the
Mhm.
word of God with people. That's my opinion. I'm sticking with it. But on this show, we're talking about relationships and how people do. And you nailed it, nailed it, nailed it, nailed it. It is, we've been taught that we women are supposed to be able to do everything. And you're right, we can't do everything. And the idea that we think that we can do everything and we can buck the trend just perpetually makes us sad and unhappy.
And there's a lot of pressure from other women who are in that same cohort to not give in, to not quit, to not, go home and, raise your kids. And so that social pressure from other women who are probably feeling the same
And it's
thing, but
ingrained in us for like 20 years,
oh yeah,
too,
yeah.
before we even get into the workforce when we're
Well, I
kids.
was in college in the 70s. You probably were too. So that's been
Well, the
almost
80s, I got in the
50 years.
80s. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I'm the old gray hair,
oh,
so,
I
right,
know.
right,
But we
right.
gotta let Jackson talk. We've been talking too much. Let's hear
Oh,
from your
Jackson's got something
generation.
to say.
Okay, so Jackson, all that stuff that we just went on, come on, it's your turn
Sure.
to go on a diatribe.
Well, I mean, it is interesting talking to people from older generations, Gen X, Boomers, Silent Generation, and so forth, because the social environment that these generations inhabited was just totally different in so many ways. I mean, like anecdotally, you hear stories about like dating people at work and like here let me share my screen. There's actually something I want to show you guys. It's a graph I think about pretty often, how couples meet in the US.
Oh, great.
And I mean, if you see, like, this goes back to 1950 and it goes to 2020, and like the traditional means of like family formation, I'd say, like through church, school, next door neighbors, like it has been precipitously going down for
Wow.
decades. And really, like the only game in town consistently since God, like probably the 2010s has been online dating. Like, uh, I'm reading this book called Bowling Alone, which is about the death of like community and the social sort of sphere in the United States and in other developed countries. And you see this happening basically everywhere. I mean, people used
That's
to have,
dramatic. I had
yeah, people used to go to Rotary clubs. There was Elks. Like there was a lot more social involvement. You look at like religiosity, at church attendance, and like it's fallen off a cliff. And it's really difficult to relate to people from older generations because um, I'd say since COVID, it's become especially acute in that uh, Gen Z youth, I guess. I mean, they're too old to be children anymore, but like they don't really socialize even the way that millennials did. Like you look at rates of alcohol consumption, going out to bars, and a lot of this is downstream of just like nobody having any money because a lot of young people are poor. But I mean, they just don't engage socially like they used to, and like you see it very acutely with young men. Here's another graph just for Gen Z men. Like I'm sure when you guys were going through high school, it was very common to date in high school, and that's just really not the case anymore. And I mean,
Whoa.
the problem is that like this other graph indicates that online dating is really the chief way that people do couple, if at all. And I think, with the exception of the app called Bumble, all the major dating apps are owned by a company called Match Group, I believe.
Like the one that did Match.com. I was one of the first ones on
Yeah. So
Match.com.
that's Tinder, that's
Back in 2000,
Hinge.
25 years ago, 26 years ago.
Sure. I think they do like more specialized ones. Like, I think there's J-Date, like other for like ethnic groups, etc. But the problem is their business model requires a continual flow of paying customers. And if people and they get into relationships, their entire revenue stream dries up. So I'm
I never
seeing
thought about it that way.
like it's totally dysfunctional. In fact, here I'll send you guys a link from an article on The Hill, but there's a lot of strong evidence that suggests that fertility in developed countries basically fell off a cliff starting in 2007, which was when Apple introduced the iPhone. And I don't know what your experience is, but like you go in public, say you're going through an airport terminal, you're out in public, whatever. People don't talk to strangers anymore. It's very uncommon. Like you have to
Oh,
be
my
extremely
son, my son
extroverted.
shocks people because he'll be walking down the street with a dog or just walking, and he'll come back and tell me how many people he got to wave to him because people aren't.
Right,
He'll just wave to people and they'll just.
right. So like the basic premise is that this technology that we've adopted relatively recently has totally impugned the ability of young people, not just to socialize, but to learn how to socialize, to take criticism, to have like witty repartee, anything like that, because it is a muscle you have to develop. And like, I mean, my dad grew up in New Jersey, and like New Jersey is like the most, I think, in terms of demographics, it's the most diverse state in the union. And in terms of population density, like how many people actually live in the state, it's also one of the highest in the union. So you have every type of person from everywhere rubbing shoulders with each other. And like you have to develop a thick skin. Like, I mean, like Jersey people can be rude. And
I
I
didn't know that
think,
about you, Mike. You were from there.
I resemble that remark.
but like, am I wrong?
You don't have
Like,
a Jersey accent at all. What's the deal?
Hey, it sort of comes and goes. Give a couple beers to me, you never know what you're
There
gonna
you
get.
go. There you go. There you go. You have a more of an accent than your dad does. But anyway, back to the topic at hand.
well,
Yeah. So
and
their point you're
there's
making.
another graph I actually want to show you guys. One moment, please. So this is happening in basically every developed country in the world. Here, let me see. So in terms of like fertility rates, so in order to have a population that is above replacement, a married couple needs to have 2.1 children. Okay. And so you look at US, look at Canada, look at Western Europe, look at Eastern Asia. Like people just aren't having children anymore. Like
So
South
wait, so
Korea,
what the colors mean?
so the
Go
darker
to the far
blue,
left.
Oh God.
yeah.
The people with the most kids is which color?
So you're
Dark
looking at
brown.
sub-Saharan Africa, Afghanistan,
Okay.
and
And people the darkest color, like China.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that means that they're having much
You-
fewer. Well, like China, until relatively recently, had their one-child
Their
policy.
one child thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
India instituted something similar. They're not accounted for in this graph for whatever reason. So, yeah, so from my vantage point, I think there are a lot of factors at play. For people who do couple, I think a huge problem is that in Western countries, definitely all English speaking countries, we do not practice intergenerational households, which is more common in, say, like Latin America, Mexico, where like you might be married, but your parents will live with you. They'll watch your kids. Like
Mhm.
you don't send them to daycare. And from my personal experience, like the daycare industrial complex is like pretty horrendous. Like we were my ex and I were looking at daycare facilities in the Madison area, and the floor was probably like $1,300 a month for day.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, no, but I mean, and
It's
that's
like a mortgage.
that's like the bottom of the barrel in terms of quality. Like realistically, it's probably more like $1,800 a month in terms of like a more quality establishment. So I think a lot of people are just priced out of it to begin with, if they even
But that's not,
to the
they're not
point.
thinking that far down before they're thinking about having a kid usually. It's just that's
Well,
just one of the ramifications once they've had the kid.
I mean, I think you'd be surprised. Like I've worked
I
with
never
younger
thought about it
guys.
before I had any of my kids, how I was going to
Um,
pay for childcare.
So recently, we had some contractors working alongside us, and we had shift work, and they were like monitoring cameras and alarms and things of that nature. And these were all like Gen Z guys, and just living, well, just hearing about how these people live, and they're well compensated too. They were getting paid like something like 27.50 an hour, and they're working full time, and like just listening to how these young guys live, where it's like in order to exist, you need multiple roommates. You don't go out to eat. Like you very seldom eat meat because you just can't afford it. I mean, I don't know if you've seen beef prices recently, even at Costco. Like I do okay, and it's something that I indulge in very infrequently. And so, like, yeah, I mean, like
Well, wait a minute. So you're just saying that the overall cost, these are people that live in Milwaukee, or where are these people live that
Madison,
you're talking about
Madison.
in Madison? Um, wow. Because I mean, my sons, I have both of them lived in high rises in downtown Portland, and they were paying close to $3,000 a month
Yeah,
in
yeah.
rent.
That's not
Rent!
atypical. I mean,
Rent!
granted, like, I mean, I lived in Oregon too, and Portland is like definitely more upscale than what I went through in Salem. But even in like in my living memory, like I remember things were much more affordable, and like the rent aspect is out of control. I mean, like if you're young and like you're working all the time and you're a renter, like, I mean, you can't afford to save really anything. You live paycheck to paycheck. If you get hurt, you're probably going to have a really bad couple of years because you're going to have to climb out of that hole financially. So, I mean, yeah, no, like when I hear that young people aren't dating, I mean, like I think there are a couple of ways of looking at it, and I think you have to address the technology aspect because I think it's like 75% of Tinder's user base is male. So even if you're on the dating apps, like you're competing against a lot of other guys, and I just like the thing that I wonder about, like people from older generations that had children and got married, they bought houses, they were more developed financially. And if they had to live the way Gen Z lives, like how many of those people would be successful? And
No,
I,
no.
I think the barriers to entry for everything, for every aspect of participation in society are just higher.